I love Terraria. It is a great game, but beating it without dying is very difficult. And this is Terraria Hardcore. For those of you new to Hardcore, this video is a collection of beginner tips that I've learned throughout my Hardcore journey that should help you survive a little bit. My first simple tip is to use potions. Now when I say this, I primarily mean ones that you find in chests while exploring. Obviously, using potions for boss fights will clearly help as well, but I'm talking early game. When you're doing your first explorations, use any potions that you find in pots or chests. Often, I don't like using consumables in video games because I think, oh, I should save this for some time when I'll really need it. Well, guess what? In Hardcore, that time may never come. In a game where you can die whenever and lose everything, just use things as you get them. More than likely, the moment that you find a potion will be the best time to use it. And besides, potions in Terraria are pretty easy to make, so you can always craft more later. The potions you find will probably benefit you more while you're weak and exploring than sitting in your inventory taking up space. Alright, moving on to my second tip, use blocks. This is a sandbox game, so use that. Especially when playing harder difficulties, you do not want to fight every enemy that you come across, especially early on. Avoiding fights whenever possible, or even just using blocks to put yourself in an advantageous position when fighting enemies is extremely useful in Hardcore. You can use blocks to block yourself off from enemies, block enemies in, or just to traverse the world. Fall damage is just as dangerous as enemies. You should always have platforms, blocks, and rope in your hotbar close at hand. Use recall potions. Sometimes, no matter how well you play, you get into an extremely dangerous situation. Recall potions are your best friend. They can quickly get you out of any sticky situation. And while it's a very basic concept to understand, it can be very difficult to know when to apply it. My rule of thumb is to recall as soon as you start to lose control of the situation. Don't be afraid to recall. Losing your position in a cave is a much better alternative to losing an entire run, especially if you've already put a lot of time into it. Also, recall potions are much faster than magic mirrors, so even when you find a magic mirror, you should still keep recall potions in your hotbar for those tight spots throughout the entire game. Organize your hotbar. Now this point is kind of attached to my last 2 points. Having blocks, recalls, platforms, rope, along with your main weapons and potentially tools in your hotbar, keeping it organized is extremely important. Coming up with a system to have a consistent place for each of these will help you a lot in the long run. For example, I keep my main weapons in slots 1 and 2, with recalls close by at 3. One more slot down at 4, I keep some type of block in order to wall things off or trap things in. If I'm using my main weapon, I can scroll up to 0 and 9 for ropes and platforms respectively. Then the remaining slots are usually filled up with random things I may need, like my fishing rod. As a continuation of this point, organize your inventory and chests as well. Spending time in a cave looking for something specific in your inventory will often result in an enemy coming up on you while you're distracted. At least it's happened to me way more than I care to admit. So while you're in a safe spot, take some time to sort your inventory in a way that makes sense to you. Organize your chests as well. Reducing the time spent sifting through all your chests and finding where things are is a godsend. Not to mention that if you sort and store everything, you won't have to go on a dangerous expedition to gather some weird item that you may have misplaced or trashed. I've seen too many people die to stupid things because they were gathering some resource that we already had in an organized chest. I know one time somebody died in hard mode because a rune wizard telefragged them and one-shot them, and they were just trying to gather some obsidian, which you bet we already had in a chest. It's a good idea to come up with a system that works for you, which you can then easily implement in every hardcore run you do, and then that's one less thing to worry about. Decluttering your mind and your inventory. Build infrastructure. I know you can't really implement this tip immediately, and it's a little bit more vague. It's more of a process throughout a run than like a concrete tip that you can implement every time. Building NPC housing, pylons, fishing spots, and mob farms are all extremely important. While each individual project won't necessarily increase your survivability much, having them all is extremely helpful. Having efficient farms for common resources will save you time and won't put you in any dangerous situations that can escalate out of your control. Having pylons and fishing holes set up will help you get fishing quests done, and fishing is a very reliable way to get loot without putting yourself in unnecessary danger, and also provides crucial ingredients for potions. Overall, just having all of these things set up throughout your world will make it so much easier to get things done. My last point kind of led into this one already. Over-prepare, particularly for boss fights, but just in general, this is a great tip. Building a good arena for bosses, reforging your gear, stocking up on helpful potions, are just a few examples of things that may seem like a lot of work, but will pay off immensely. And besides, once you start implementing my tips of organizing and building infrastructure, you'll already have a lot more towards this than you realize. Building an herb farm to make potions doesn't take that long, and only takes a little bit of maintenance here and there afterwards. If you set up pylons and fishing ponds, you'll already have access to the fish you need for potions. And if you have your chests organized neatly, you'll already have all of your potion materials gathered in one place. If you've already built some mob farms, you'll have money for reforging. I think you get the point. The more effort you put into your run, the easier it will be, and the more rewarding it will be as well. When you put in a lot of work to prepare for a particular boss and finally beat it, it feels amazing. And yes, it can suck to put all of this work into a world only to die. But the more often that you do these things, the quicker it will become a habit, and before you realize, it will just be second nature to implement all of these things in each run. Now, hopefully you'll be surviving farther and farther into your hardcore runs with these beginner tips. But at the end of the day, here's my final tip. Play however is fun for you. All these tips are useless if you're miserable while playing. Whatever makes the game more fun for you, do that. You'll learn and get better by just playing the game, and the best way to play the game is by having fun. So take all of my tips with a grain of salt and just have fun. Normally, this is the part of the video where I tell you that my Discord and Twitch are linked in the description below. But not today. Today, I want to tell you to check out my friend Wexel Radley. He makes hilarious videos about Terraria Hardcore, and I figure that if you've watched this video all the way to the end, you might be interested in hardcore Terraria. What are you still doing here? Go check him out.